But before we look into the insights, part of the data that I'll be using today will come from the MANCOS 2025 State of Human Risk Report. And this was developed through an independent global research entity called Vanson Bourne, an international research firm. And what they did is they interviewed over 1,100 IT and security leaders across the United States, Europe, South Africa, and Australia. So all these organizations that were involved in this research had 250 or more employees. And the reason for that was that organizations of those sizes generally will have a formal IT policy that's in place. They'll have documented cyber incidents that they've experienced in the past. They'll have dedicated security staff, measurable reporting capabilities, and to a degree, process or SOPs or clear processes that are getting refined over time. So what this allowed the researchers to do is to track the patterns, compare the data, and identify the trends accurately across the countries, across all these entities. But the key point here that is, even though the study particularly was focused on 250 plus employee organizations, the types of attacks that they face are the same attacks that affect smaller businesses, medium businesses, schools, clinics, nonprofits, and even micro organizations. Human behavior doesn't change with the company size. We all face the same risk. So the insights from this research today is helpful for anyone in this room, in this forum, whether you lead a team of 5 individuals, 50, or 5,000 individuals across the organization. So cybercrime is rising across the world, and I'm pretty sure all of us are aware of that. And South Africa continues to rank among the most targeted countries for phishing, impersonation, fraud, banking detail changes, social engineering, and ransomware. So globally, what we're seeing from a trend perspective is human error, firstly, is, and again, very, very pivotal now, is playing the biggest role in most breaches or compromises. Second to that, 95% of organizations from the study expect email attacks to increase. Well, it has increased because we're now at the end of 2025. And attacks through tools like WhatsApp, Teams, Slack, if you're using that, Zoom, like we're leveraging right now, have actually grown to 44%. So they're utilizing these extended platforms. About 80%, or 8% rather, not 80, 8% of users in a typical organization will drive most of the risk or have risky behavioral patterns. And this is often due to work pressure or life pressure or even the workload that they'll probably presented with or that they're dealing with. Many incidents will begin with a level of social engineering. Attackers basically convincing someone to take an action that will benefit them. And in South Africa, these global patterns are more visible. There's reports from other vendors or other sources, such as ESET, and what they do is they're an antivirus security provider. They've been around for 30 years. There's Interpol that's also submitted or actually contributed to this research as well. And then there's ITWeb that shows that South Africa is experiencing a very high volume of ransomware and phishing attempts. Phishing alone represents more than half of all the reported cyber threats locally. And this shows up in real scenarios such as, altered or fake supply invoices, WhatsApp account takeovers, email impersonation, payment redirection scams, business social media page compromises, unauthorized access to mailboxes, business mailboxes in this case, or even personal ones, and then customer information that's been exposed or stolen. These issues affect any organization of any size, from small NGOs to schools, SMEs, online stores, or corporates. Attackers, what they are generally looking for is the opportunity. They don't really care about the size. So they focus on the platforms and the communication channels or the tools that we use on a daily basis. Before we move into the solutions, it's important that we all get a clear understanding of how these attacks actually happen. So let's look at the few techniques that we generally see from a security or cyber perspective in the wild or in reality. The first one, which will be very, very common, is phishing. And this actually can come across in various forms. And just a disclaimer, this is an AI-generated tool. And I'm going to use that aspect to a certain degree later on in this conversation. But phishing happens when attackers will send an email or an SMS, a WhatsApp message, or a social media alert that looks completely normal, sometimes even professional. And the intention here is to get someone to click on a link, open a file, or share personal information. The messages that work and that are associated to these would be something that looks like it's routine or it's urgent. And the statements generally would range from your parcel is waiting for delivery. The next one would be your account will be suspended, verify now. Invoice attached, payment overdue, or the classic one, your boss has shared a document with you. This is for the new starts who are still trying to level up with the unwritten ground rules from a new organization perspective. So what attackers are doing is they design these messages to imitate or copy banks, suppliers, government services, Microsoft 365 or Google, we'll speak to that later on. SaaS, courier companies, we see that a lot on SMSs, social media alert, or even internal colleagues that we work with. So, I mean, once someone interacts with the message, and attackers may just, have these specific outcomes, such as steal the login passwords to your mail account or your account in general, install software viruses, redirect payments, collect personal or customer details for their own gain access to a business email account, or impersonate the victim that they've actually gained access to from an account perspective, or ultimately just pivot deeper into the organization through the connected platforms that we use, from a cloud perspective, or from a solution perspective that you're being provided. So phishing succeeds because attackers study their behavior. They know that people are busy, moving very fast to that fact. And then we're dealing with large volumes of communication. So they rely on timing, trust, and distraction, not technical weaknesses in this situation. Other common signs of phishing would include email impersonation that we've highlighted earlier on. And this is where attackers don't access the systems at all. What they do is they'll just create an email address that looks almost identical to the real one and use it to send instructions or requests. They'll add one extra character or an altered character that can make the difference very hard to spot, as you can see in the illustration here. Another attempt or another technique they use is fake invoices. Once they obviously leveraging the email impersonation attempt or technique, as in this case, attackers will have access to an email account or study the conversation. And this is if they've got access to the account and have actually compromised it. And then what they'll do is within this compromised state, which in our studies, we've actually seen a compromised account can only be detected that it actually has been taken over up to 8 months or a year. You can imagine how many transactions, how many people you've been communicating with in a space of 8 months alone. There's so many transactions, there's so many communications, there's so many confirmations. And what they do is they'll wait for the real invoice. If there is some form of transaction that requires an invoice, is they'll wait for a real invoice to be sent, then send a modified version of that with new banking details. And I'm pretty sure most of us have actually been exposed to this in this negative form. And because the invoice looks expected, the change usually goes unnoticed unless there's a standard operating procedure that's been put in place to say, if there are banking details that are changed, we need to either call and verify. And this is a two-way streak or a two-way handshake where the party on the other end would also have to have these standard operating procedures to ensure that they don't fall victim for fraudulent payment requests that look like the one that we're talking about today. Other common signs further to that is credential theft or password theft. Attackers generally, what they will do is they will create fake login pages that will mimic platforms like Microsoft, Google, or other banking portals. And the reality for this is that from a Microsoft perspective, a lot of organizations are utilizing this platform extensively. There's a growing trend. Just let alone from statistics that have been out from 2024, the United States had over 1 million organizations utilizing Microsoft. This is just in one country. Now, there's been an extensive usage of Microsoft, and organizations are utilizing this because it's easier to communicate. People share documents. And again, if you're using a different platform, it's very difficult to actually get that, and it makes business very tough, and you become not so easy to deal with in this situation. And so parallel to the growth, there's parallel attempts to actually attack or mimic those platforms to fool people. So when someone gets a fictitious Microsoft 365 login page that gets delivered by email, in most cases, someone will enter their credentials. And so what will happen in the case is this fake website will then capture those details and then send them to the attacker that wants to gain unauthorized access to the mailbox. but it only doesn't end at the mailbox, because with a solution like a Microsoft or a Google Workspace or any cloud platform that you use, is it's such a diverse platform that consolidates all of the services. So there's mailboxes that they've got access to from a malicious perspective. It's the files that have been shared on the emails that have been stored on your cloud storage platforms like OneDrive, um, what's the other one? G Drive, Dropbox. This financial information, if you're utilizing a capability or a free, call it mechanism to log into systems called single sign-on, and you're using the same username and the password, they will utilize that information to access other platforms, financial systems, and customer data. And so this is where it's imperative to have something called multi-factor authentication, which drastically reduces the risk significantly by eliminating or reducing them having exposure to that. But we will talk to multi-factor authentication as a solution to actually incorporate in the organization. And then what we also start to see is from an organization perspective is social media page hacks. Business pages that are peeling targets because the audience is there and then there's credibility. So what attackers will often do here is they'll try to gain access through weak or reused passwords, or through a phishing link that's actually sent through the page admins. But once they're inside a social media account, and this is, it could be LinkedIn, it could be Instagram, could be TikTok. A lot of businesses are leveraging these social media platforms to advertise their services. And I've got one account, actually, just one account that I've actually come across where this was a hairstylist. This is a micro business. This is one individual, and they sell luxurious hair. Up to the value of about 20,000 Rand per unit. Now, this individual unfortunately had their account compromised. Someone logged into their Instagram account. And you can imagine, because this person, if he's selling hair to the range of 20,000 Rand, he's got repeat customers. And so he's got credibility. He's got his customer confidence. So this person who's gained access to this social media account that belongs to this individual is now interacting and transacting with customers. And because he's built up such a long history of trust with his customers are readily, easily available to pay funds to him because they trust that he will deliver the supposed or the proposed product, which is the luxurious hair. So in this situation, what was happening is obviously the malicious access to his account were transacting or getting payments to a fictitious account, and because customers utilizing call it non-corporate platforms like social media and using direct messages on those platforms, people are just transacting and then obviously paying via e-wallet, nothing that necessarily goes to an account in this situation. So it's actually very difficult to even trace it in that case. And what's happening now is, as the business owner, you're losing credibility, you're losing money. Only you realize it later on that, hey, listen, my customers are actually transacting with a fictitious entity that's actually compromised my account. So not only does it tarnish his brand, it also kills his confidence from a customer perspective. Customers have a 67% chance or even higher to leave and not deal with an organization that's actually gone through some form of compromise, and they have ultimately lost something. It even happens even if they've not lost any forms of funds in any way or form. So social media page hacks are quite a thing, and they cripple quite a lot of micro businesses that actually utilize social media for business transactions. Another one would be WhatsApp account takeovers, where criminals will attempt to obtain that 6-digit verification code. And once they've got that, they can register your number on their device and start to send messages to your contacts, often posing as you. And generally, they'll ask for, hey, I'm in a rut. Can you please send me some form of funds or cash? They'll send it to family members. If it's a business account and you're utilizing WhatsApp, then there's even a bigger problem where now they'll start leveraging and targeting your customers because you've got that credibility and that trust that's actually been built over a respective amount of time. With all of this, once someone gains access to your account, one thing I'd really not wish on anyone is, yes, unauthorized access is a problem. Losing money to unauthorized access and someone posing as you is a problem. Another one would be ransomware, where this is software or viruses that locks your files completely. And because someone has access to your accounts, they can either exfiltrate or remove or take up this data that will be documents or any kinds of information. Or ultimately, what they can do now to extort you even further is they will install this malware that locks your files and systems, and then they'll ultimately demand forms of payment so that they can even restore the access. Usually this starts with some form of malicious attachment or harmful links that you're not even aware of that may have been received via WhatsApp, email, or even your personal email accounts on your specific laptop that you use to trade with as well. And another element would be, again, weak remote access passwords. And this is one of those few criteria as well that we actually start to see from a compromise perspective. Now, these are the problems, or these are the techniques that are being leveraged. But let's talk about how to protect your organizations using practical, simple steps to prevent what we just discussed. What we'll do is we'll discuss 4 parts: how to protect your business data, how to protect your business data, and simply all the documents that you actually transact with, that you share, all the way down to the customers that you interact with, and then the business team that you work with that handles the data and communicates with the customers as well. And then look at effective measures that we can all action from today. Every organization handles sensitive documents daily. That'll be invoices, contracts, IDs, copies, payroll, customer data, supply records. But the research shows that IT leaders worry most about accidental information leak, oversharing of information, whether it be verbally in public spaces or whether it be on devices such as cell phones and they're not really being monitored, weak passwords coming up again, the use of public Wi-Fi or unsafe networks that we are not aware of and where they're actually coming from in coffee shops or any public spot, sending files to personal emails, mishandling files in these collaboration tools that we use, like Teams or any other form of collaboration tool that you utilize as an instant messaging tool. So how can you, as an individual, manage or reduce the risk? So let's look at 5 simple ways to protect your documents. So the first one would be, and again, not in an order of importance, but the first one that comes top of mind would be cloud storage, which is one of the simplest ways to protect sensitive business information. So when documents are kept only in laptops or hard drives, WhatsApp or USBs, they are at risk of being lost, stolen, or corrupted. Platforms like OneDrive and SharePoint and Google Drive provide secure storage, easy sharing, version control, and then provide proper access management. So what this will ultimately do is they will help you protect company data and work more efficiently and recover information quickly if something goes wrong. And going wrong in most cases is you're working on one document in the office, you did not click Control Save or Control S, or you just did not save it simply, and then you want to try and get home and try and work on the same document that you were working on for the past 3 hours, only to find that it did not save successfully, or most of your progress is actually not being stored. So platforms like OneDrive and Google Drive will actually help save your, call it your progress at the point of entry. And this is usually like at, call it 2 5-minute intervals where it actually looks at the changes and then updates those changes. So it actually is quite advantageous to utilize this from a productivity perspective over and above from a security standpoint. Whenever possible, it's always great to use secure links instead of attachments. So attachments in this situation, and this is in a particular situation where you are sending these files on email to someone outside or within the organization as well. So attachments can be saved, and that this is the downside of it, is that attachments physically can be saved, copied or forwarded or downloaded without your knowledge. However, what a secure link will do is to give you full control. You can even decide who can access it, how long, and what they're allowed to do with it. So you can dictate how they can handle it. This keeps your documents protected and ensures that people will always open the latest version. And then also lets you remove access at any time if you feel something has actually changed. But why would this matter? And how would this help you? So a few cases. Incorrect banking detail updates. So instead of sending a banking change as a PDF attachment, maybe share a view-only link that cannot be altered or forwarded without permission. We spoke about compromises. So this limits that exposure from that perspective. Contracts or HR documents using secure links This will reduce the chance of confidential documents being stored on personal devices and even being shared beyond the company domain or outside the company. Customer files or invoices. Because links can expire automatically, this makes it safer for customers to download documents without having to keep permanent copies in a particular solution. And then again, these are just scenarios that will be applicable in your day-to-day business interactions. The other easy steps that you don't have to pay for, if you're leveraging platforms like, well, actually, if you're leveraging any platform, if you're using social media, you can enforce something called multi-factor authentication. So this is one of the simplest and most effective security steps that you can take, even if your password is stolen. Multi-factor, or if we shorten it, MFA, will add a second checkpoint or a code on your phone or an authentication app that attackers or anyone malicious externally can't access. And what this ultimately does is it blocks almost all automated attacks that would try to access your account, and then dramatically reduces the impact of phishing, regardless of the type of technique that we spoke about earlier on. If there's one control that you would need to enable today, let it be MFA. This is free, it's easy to set up to a degree, and it's available on almost any platform that anyone would rely on. So if you're logging into LinkedIn, or if you're logging into Facebook, I've got this, I'm testament of it. I would literally show you how many, call it second factor or two-factor codes I'm using for each platform that I'm accessing from a LinkedIn perspective, Facebook, or social media in general, or even mail accounts. But there's apps like Microsoft Authenticator, Google Authenticator, Authy, Duo, and particularly, I think, let me give you a view of this. Yeah, Duo Mobile, which actually costs nothing. You can download these from the app stores or from the Play Store, depending on the mobile device that you're using. And it's important to turn this on for any platform, because platforms that we utilize will store sensitive information: the email, the cloud, banking apps, payroll, CRM, accounting systems, social media pages, and even the website management tool that you utilize. This extra step will block at least up to 99% of all the automated attacks that your organization would possibly see, even if your password is reused, leaked, or stolen. Now, in addition to this, of course, this will give you secondary codes in addition to those reused or weak passwords. It is quite also recommended, before you even get to the MFA perspective, is using strong, unique passwords. This is something that you can also enforce very easily right now. And it's quite a sore spot for a lot of folks. We all gravitate to password 12345, our name, or anything of that sort. But using a strong, unique password is one of the most effective ways that we can protect not only the organizations, but even ourselves from a personal perspective. Most breaches will happen because the password was leaked, or it was reused, or it was just way too easy to guess. A good password doesn't need to be complicated. It just needs to be long and unique. You can even change languages or use ethnic languages if you want to make that. But there's tools like password managers that can help take this pressure off by generating and then storing these strong passwords for you. And when you combine this aspect with multi-factor authentication, it drops even further to a dramatical state. The other recommendation is, if you do have the ability and the time and the consistency, backups is also another simple form and a powerful way to protect your organization. There are two types that actually work well. So there's cloud backups, which we spoke about earlier on, and then there's offline backups. So cloud backups will protect you when your devices fail or your files are deleted on your actual device. And this is because the cloud backup will store the copies of your file in a secure remote location, which is separate from your main device. And particularly if you're using Microsoft or Google, they will have this function where you can enable so that anything that you work on will be stored on these third-party platforms like OneDrive or G Drive in this situation. And examples of these are particularly G Drive, OneDrive, iCloud Drive backups will be another one, Dropbox is another one. But you also do get professional backup tools, which you'd need to pay for, which will range from platforms known as Acronis, Blackblaze, Veeam, just to mention a few, which are actually quite good for SMEs to utilize. This is actually great for everyday protection, remote work, quick recovery that you can rely on. Another form of backup, in addition to the online that will actually actively work in the background without you having to intervene, would be a second form of backup, which we do recommend as well. So in case your cloud storage has been compromised, again, if you remember, if you've got a weak password, someone's gained access, they can gain access to your storage repositories. So in situations where there's one of these factors that were a lagging indicator, such as a weak password and someone's gained access to that, if you've backed up to an offline repository, similar to a hard drive of some sort, this will protect you from ransomware and give you a second layer of recovery. So even if you forget everything else, this one I would recommend. So one, backup is good, but two will really make it quite a resilient strategy for your business, or just alone if you're actually doing that. You can get these types of hard drives from any store, Incredible Connection, Hi-Fi Corporation, and anything that actually is like about 500 gigabytes, that would be sufficient enough that matches your laptop. But again, generally, if you walk into these stores, there will be specialists that will be able to advise you on what you would need to take, or that will work for your organization. One of the most effective ways, also free, to protect your organization is to limit who can see sensitive information. Not everyone needs access to payroll systems, contracts, where they're actually stored, customer data, or financial records. Giving access to only the people or the one person who needs it will help prevent mistakes, protect privacy, reduce fraud risk, and then stop attackers from reaching critical files, even if the account is compromised, because you've only isolated it to that one individual or that group of people that have access to that particular file set. Most cloud platforms are able to do this. They can actually give you an ability to remove access or block someone from specific access or files that they would need to have visual, call it, exposure to. All right. So these 5 actions, just as a recap, these can help reduce the risk that any SME or any large organization can face in an everyday to day basis when handling data across electronic devices. So that's store your files in the cloud. You can do a screenshot of this, turn on multi-factor authentication, sharing files using secure links, making backups, and limiting access to a degree where possible.